Guys, you again with Committed. I'm Viktor Sokolovsky and this is Evgen Kiselevsky. And today we have a very special guest, one of the world-known experts in usability, Thomas Geis. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Victor.
Hi.
Nice garden.
Hi. Yeah. Well, yeah. To be honest, I'm on holiday and I'm currently in France in a nice hotel in an area called Alsace, and my family is with me. They're looking at me. I'm in the garden here, and it's beautiful weather. Yeah. What more do you want?
Yeah, thank you for joining us from your holidays, and I think we will start.
Yes. Let's start from the simple question. I know that you are already 30 years in profession. Actually, was the main reason for you to start as a usability expert?
Well, that's a good question. I'm one of these people who got into this field without a plan for it. I am actually an engineer. I'm an automatic control engineer. This is what I studied, and in beginning of the 90s, 1990, I was looking for a job, and engineers were wanted. They were always wanted, but not for what I had studied. And at that time, a so-called certification body, a company that certifies products for all kinds of quality attributes. They were looking for engineers who could get into the business of usability engineering and especially usability testing. And as I didn't have a background in it, I was sent to senior professionals to educate me, senior professionals in research in this field. And one of them was Dr. Wolfgang Jidder. He is actually the founder of what is now known to be the 7 interaction principles. And so I had good teachers, and this is how I got, that's how I got my feet into this business. But you asked a simple question, but the answer, I have to add one more thing. I think it is important that you have empathy for people, for other people who are struggling with technology. I think if you have empathy, if you see other people struggling, that's how it starts. If you see people having difficulties with products, I think you are already a candidate to work in the field of usability. And I guess that's one reason why I have been doing this for the last 30 years. It's exciting.
Okay. How profession changed over this time, 30 years?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. How did the profession change? Um, I would say in the beginning, you had uh, a few very skilled professionals who were very knowledgeable in what we now refer to as usability guidelines, in rules. Rules were always known for usability, but in the beginning you had people who basically knew lots and lots of rules, and because they knew the rules, they could easily tell you what's wrong with the product. And if you ask me what has changed over the last 30 years, I would say we have more and more methods around, methods that help us integrating the field of usability into regular product design. I think that is what has changed, because in the beginning it was more or less always the experts who you would ask if you could find them, and typically they were asked very late in the process of developing a product. And these days it is a lot of people who know the methods to be applied as part of a project to get, let's say, predictable usability and predictable user experience. And there's a question here I see in the chat. Is there a particular model we follow to do usability testing? I would say yes, there is. Whether you call it a model, there is a method set that one should apply when doing usability testing. And I would say the best source of this is actually the curriculum for the certified professional for usability testing and evaluation. which is public on the internet as part of the so-called uxqb.org. I guess what you find there is the latest, really applicable set of methods to do practical usability testing. Because there was this question, I thought I had to answer it.
Oh.
I saw it in the
yeah, great. But
what do
we
you call it?
we
In the
will come back to the chart a little bit later. But
Right.
if
Okay,
it's more
okay.
convenient for you,
Good.
you may answer in online mode.
No.
So no problem. Don't worry with that.
No. The best is you just ask me. You ask me, and I look up
Okay.
in the trees.
Okay.
Okay, Thomas, in your bio, you say that you had experience, I mean, in terms of usability, working with safety critical systems, medical devices, and even nuclear
Yes.
plants. Could you please comment each one?
Yes. What was the last question, Victor? I didn't get
Nuclear
that one.
plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
you do have control rooms.
Yes.
what is this all about? So how it's work to make
it's a-
usability of
yeah.
nuclear plant equipment?
Okay. Yes. Well, very simple. Well, not very simple, but explainable. In every, let's say, industrial plant, big sort of a big company where you see lots of chimneys or lots of noise and lots of pipes and things, in such large plants, you always have what's called control rooms. And in these control rooms, you have people sitting who watch screens, and they see, for example, the temperature of specific elements within that plant, which is critical in nuclear plants. And these people, they make decisions as part of their work. Basically, they just observe what's happening in the plant. Hopefully, not a lot is happening. Everything is going according to the plan. But if things change unexpectedly, they have to analyze the data in front of them, and they have knobs and buttons to press, and they might press the wrong ones. And this is usability engineering in nuclear power plants, and there's actually ISO standards for control rooms, so-called control rooms. There is known incidents. I'm not talking about the Eastern European ones. I'm talking about European ones. There were troubles in the 80s in the United Kingdom with a place that's now called Windscale. At the time, it was called Sellafield. And the problems, this plant basically, had a major incident, nuclear power plant, and this incident could be traced back to usability problems. And this is why a standard for usability of control rooms came out. It's practical work by the end of the day. Practical
Okay,
work.
so
People
this is
study.
so this
Yes.
is all about to
Yes.
prevent stuff to press the wrong button.
Yes, because you have, put it this way, when it comes to safety critical systems, to begin with, you want to make sure the users of those systems, they don't make use errors that can cause harm to themselves, harm to patients, harm to the environment. This is what we have in nuclear power plants. And you could say the lowest level of usability is that people manage to operate a machine the way it is supposed to be operated. You could say that is the lowest level of usability, and this level has to be achieved in safety critical systems. That doesn't mean that they are afterwards pleasant to use, but they are safe to use. It's a sort of a prerequisite for good usability. Most of these industrial control rooms, they wouldn't win the Nobel Prize for usability, but these days most of them are rather safe. Yeah.
Okay, Thomas, from what kind of industry you have most set of your clients? It's software development, it's hardware, automotive.
Yes. Yeah. You can say 30% is software development, and clients of us are, on one hand, companies like SAP, from Germany, a large software house, or another one called Software AG. It's a German one. It's the second largest in our country. So we have software companies developing, let's say, products for the market. And on the other hand, we have customers who have very large internal development projects. Lufthansa, German Railway, also federal organizations in Germany we work for. So that all adds up to, let's say, 30% of our work, software development, either in the product industry or in, let's say, in the project industry, you could say. Another 30% is, or probably now rather 40%, is medical devices. Medical devices is a massive market, an incredibly growing market with products that are potentially dangerous. That's about 40%. And another 30%, I would say, is household equipment and all kinds of innovative, let's say, all kinds of devices where something new has been identified and has to be designed, and that could be as simple as an egg boiler. You know my egg boiler example from my presentations, but that is probably a good example for the 30% crazy things that we are working on.
Okay. Can you explain in the simple words what actually clients from medicine expect from you or request from you?
This again has changed over the last 10 years. Let's say in the first, if I look back at the last 10 years where we started working for the medical industry, in the beginning they just tried to do their best to make the devices safe in terms of people couldn't cause harm to the patient. And to make them safe was often not a matter of changing the product, because often it was far too late to change the product. If you have a product that is ready to ship and you do usability testing with it to find out that people make incredible mistakes with it, then one way of changing the situation is to change your users. I'm serious. You are changing your users in terms of you are training them. You basically train the mistakes out of their heads. So that was the first 5 years of the last decade. The last 5 years, companies ask us for two things, medical device manufacturers. On one hand, they want the product to be safe. On the other hand, they want to be competitive with new players on the market. You have more and more startups in the medical field. It's incredible to see this, who come up with pretty good stuff that their long established competitors never thought about. And so the last 5 years, it's about making the system safe, which is still a challenge, and making them competitive. And usability has become a very competitive factor. Mm-hmm.
Okay, can we say that safety is a part of usability?
Here you have to be careful with what you're saying, because the safety community, you have these communities. You have the safety community, they think they are the most important one. You have the usability community, they think they are the most important one. You have the market research community, they believe they are. So you have to be careful. Now, but Victor, my answer to this is safety includes, or bad safety includes what we now that's another late term, I'm afraid. I don't want to buzzword around, but there is a very late term that is more and more used. It's called use safety. Use safety. It's a term you can Google and you would find even in regulatory documents. So to answer your question, you can say products have to be safe from a technical perspective. And this is something that engineers manage quite well. But also products have to be safe from a use perspective. And that's why the term use safety came in. So I would say using usability methods or using human-centered design is one approach to make products safe. Safe from the perspective of use. Mm-hmm.
Okay, my next question about the software development area. Actually, what kind of services they request?
In our case, I have to speak for my company and speak from my experience and myself. It's mainly either in a very late phase of the development, they are testing more and more, and because they test more and more, they also want usability testing to be done. So that is something we often do in a very late phase of product development. And in the early phase of product development or software development, what we are typically asked for is to identify the user requirements for the product and to do another buzzword, I'm afraid. Well, it's not a buzzword, but it's a new term. There's new terminology emerging. Another thing we're doing is what's now referred to as conceptual modeling. Conceptual modeling. And that sounds esoteric, but it's all about, once you have the requirements from the user's perspective, what you identify then is what are the objects and tools that users really need on the user interface. That's what we call conceptual modeling. We're asked for that a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so you've mentioned few buzzwords. There are a lot, much more on the market. Let's start from the basic ones: usability, user experience, customer experience. So sounds pretty similar. So what are these words all about? So what is the main difference? How to to define one from another?
Right. Now, I'm a big fan of definitions, and that's why I work a lot in developing ISO standards for usability and user experience. Usability and user experience are both defined terms. Usability is defined. I don't now copy the definition of it, but to have a bit of an idea, usability is about enabling people to get to their outcome with a system as easy as possible. And as easy as possible means with the minimum of obstacles in the way. If you walk down a road and there are stones everywhere, and every 5 meters you hit a stone, we would say this is an obstacle. And if you take this obstacle out of the way, the person who wants to go from A to B will have a usable path to go. So usability is about mainly making people efficient with a system, no matter if they like it a lot or not. So usability is based on objective data, I would say, primarily. And user experience, by definition, is about perceptions and responses that people have before, during, and after using a product. That's user experience. So in user experience, you have the emotional factor in there, because the perception of this headset I'm wearing is that I struggled with it 10 minutes before we started talking today. Although it's expensive, it's from a very known manufacturer, which I'm not going to name. I had lots of trouble with naming those manufacturers in the past, but if you have a close look, you might see. Anyway, but this headset, today I decided I will never ever use it again in such sessions. Although it's very comfortable, it seems to not work when it's supposed to work. And this is called a response. What I'm telling you now is called a response as part of user experience. And so user experience is not a competitive concept to usability. It is a complementary concept. I would say without usability, you won't get good user experience. Now, the next term, of course, is customer experience. You asked 3 terms, right? Customer experience is also defined, but it has been defined by the Customer Experience Professionals Organization. They now exist. It's an American organization, and you have lots of market research professionals in there. And with customer experience, I would say, customer experience is the emotions and the perceptions and responses that people have, not only with the product that they wear on their head, in this case, but also with the manufacturer of that product. Because I'm now upset with that manufacturer. I'm not only upset with the product, I'm upset with the manufacturer. And that's not good for this company, although I think it's a good company, but I'm upset with them. And so at this moment, I have a negative customer experience. Now, that's how I would sort of differentiate them from a pragmatic perspective.
Okay, thanks. But as a lot of our viewers are probably from software development world, so in software development area, you can often hear
Yeah.
that user experience is something about design or even more about graphical design. You have this UI UX designer, and this is what a lot of people think about all this field. What do you think about
Hmm.
this? Whether it's about design
Well,
or about something else?
well, it's about it is about design, but not only. It is about analysis, design, and evaluation, because these are the three key elements of a development process. You analyze, then you design, and then you evaluate what you have designed, and hopefully you do it in small sprints in an agile style. This is always helpful because you quickly find things. But your question was, is usability and user experience just related to design or primarily related to design? I would say no. It's equally relevant in analysis and in design. Because if you don't get the right requirements for a product, you fix the product. You cannot fix the right requirements in design. Therefore, analysis, which is a job that more and more people do who call themselves business analysts, has a lot to do with user experience, because they are defining. They call themselves business analysts. The word analysis is in there. They define what later on has to be built. And if they define the wrong thing, you will have negative user experience. I hope my answers are not too long, but I want to give another example. If you look at eBay, for example, eBay is an interesting phenomenon. The design, the visual design of eBay, basically is very, very minimalistic. You have hyperlinks, which are blue and underlined, which they always should be, and these days never are. You have input fields that have a white background and a black frame. You have a very, very simple design, but the user experience, the excitement in it, comes from the fact that you have one user group that always believes they have sold their rubbish for twice as much as they would have got when they have given it to a friend or I don't know. And on the other hand, you have the people who buy something and believe they got it for half as much money as they would have got it in the shop. So this is user experience, and it doesn't have that much to do with the design, the visual design of the website. The visual design of the website is actually in a style that lets you really concentrate on your user experience, which is, hey, I've got this notebook from I don't know what the company is called for €800, and in the shop it's 2,500. And on the other hand, you see somebody sitting there who has 100 of them and hopes that he gets rid of them. Anyway, so it's not just design. It's a lot of it is analysis and design. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So we will already talk about usability testers, about business analysts, about designers. There are also UI UX developers and maybe product managers who is also making input into the usability and the design of the final product. But who should be, at the end of the day, who should be responsible for usability of the product? What's the role? Is have the final word and the final responsibility for all this stuff.
Right. Now, of course, I could quote ISO standards here. Maybe at this stage I should at least give a number. I should at least give a number of an ISO standard that is not that well known yet. It's ISO 9241 part 220, not 210. 220. And this is about enabling organizations to do human-centered design effectively. And this standard, I'm co-editor of it, I'm afraid. This standard assumes that usability engineering and user experience engineering has to take place on 3 levels in an organization. Let's start with the lowest level, which is the practical level. That's projects. every company has projects, and you hope that within those projects, the work is done in a style that leads to usability and positive user experience. That is the project level. But the trouble that we see in organizations is that projects are not equipped with methods and planning tools to make sure they really integrate usability and user experience into their project plan. So this is what we call the second level, which is the infrastructure level. What do we mean with infrastructure level? Infrastructure level means that a company has responsibles, and here are the people we are looking for, responsibles that make sure that everybody who enters the company has the same training in usability, that every project gets great templates that they can use to fill in their usability related data, that every project gets told which methods to apply to get to the usable outcome. And to answer your question, and that's the second level in a company. And then we have a third level, which is the C level, the top management level. And one thing we have learned from lots of organizations is if the managers don't believe in usability and user experience, people do something else. If you don't get told by the top bosses, look, we follow the 7 interaction principles in every project, and we want to make sure that by the end of the project, the outcome is in line with those 7 principles. I'm just using that as an example. If you don't have that C-level commitment in the organization, your organization will not become mature over time to build usable products. So if you ask for who should do the work by the end of the day, well, in projects, you need someone who looks after the user requirements. You need someone who looks after the usable design. That's not necessarily a designer, a classical designer. It's somebody who looks at the usability aspects of the design, and you have to have usability testers in the project. So there are 3 roles on project level that you need. If you don't have them in place, it's not going to happen. On the infrastructure level, you need someone, and that's what you more and more call UX managers, people who are in charge of the infrastructure, who provide the projects with the tools, methods, and plans that they need to do right. That's the second responsibility, and the third one is the top management that has to come up with policies that they believe in, and therefore everybody else believes in the company. So we wouldn't look for one single role in an organization. You have to look for roles at 3 levels: projects, infrastructure, management. And that's
Great.
written in a standard, and you can read it all up.
Great,
Yes.
thanks.
Thomas, look, in the past we had several big things. I would say the first one was desktop application, then we have web applications. Now I think we could see the end of the era of mobile applications.
Yes.
And the future, I think Mark Zuckerberg says it's augmented reality, but other guy says it's like a virtual reality. So could you give us a hint how usability changes over these big things? Or will change, I mean, in terms of future?
Well, what changes based on the new platforms that we employ is more or less the guidelines to be applied. When you apply new technology such as a 10-inch visual display, then you have to know what are the guidelines to be applied to keep this thing usable. I must admit, when I give trainings, I often use augmented reality examples to show how you can let users anticipate a product by feeling they have it in their hands, although they don't. I must say, with regards to technology, I'm rather, what's the word for that? I wouldn't want to say conservative, but I'm rather skeptical that we will have incredible technologies that change or affect the way we look at usability these days. I must admit, I rather have to warn companies who have rather well-established user interfaces where nobody really has a problem with, and they now feel all of a sudden that they are old-fashioned. I'd be very careful. I'd be very careful because, I'd be very careful. Whatever works as a product that has proven to be usable and have a positive user experience, I'd be careful in touching that. It's. I hope I answer your question, but the thing is, you have to look at the term innovation. Innovation. Innovation is a highly cited term these days. Everybody wants to be an innovator, and every company wants to be innovative. And if you look at definitions for innovation, if you take your time, you will find there is definitions from a technical perspective, where you would say, it's also called technology-centered innovation. For example, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was innovation, It's a technical innovation, but it was only innovation from the user's perspective because it increased usability. And because all of a sudden you were able to work without cables, to work wherever you are, but the definition of innovation that I'm actually what's the word for that I try to push forward is the following. Innovation is the solution to a problem that the user only realizes that he had the problem after it has been solved. That is what I believe true innovation is. When you experience something where you say, goodness, how great is this? And the last 20 years were actually not that great, looking back at them from the perspective of this new product. So that is innovation from the user's perspective. And often you achieve this innovation without new technology, but with changes in the user interface, changes in the model of the user interface. I'm probably not a big futurist here, but there's a few rules that we have learned from mobile, which is one rule is mobile first. Mobile first means whatever you design, make first sure it works on a mobile device, and once you have made that sure, worry about the rest. But that's approximately it, I'm afraid. The rest is really usability guidelines. If you have a notebook in front of you and you look at the keyboard, you see keys of a certain size, and you see the distance between two keys. The size of the keys is standardized, and the distance between the two keys is standardized. And if you go beyond the size of the keys on your notebook and beyond the distance between two keys of your physical notebook, then you will have trouble on a mobile device. And that's usability guidelines. It's all usability guidelines,
Okay, thanks. And talking about the rules and talking about the stability of the rules in usability field. So what are the main axioms of usability? What are the main rules that everybody should follow to make good usable products?
Right. Now, of course, now you're talking to a man who works in standards, and there is a standard for human system interaction called, the number is ISO 9241 part 110, and the title of the standard is Interaction Principles. And this standard contains 7 principles that are completely technology independent. You can apply them to software, nuclear power plants, as well as bicycle stands. And these 7 principles are the principles where I say, if you don't remember anything from usability, anything you have learned, you should still remember those 7 principles. And these 7 principles are, if you want me to throw them at you, the first one is suitability for the task, which basically means don't impose steps on users that they never wanted to make. The second one is self-descriptiveness, which simply says, give a user the information necessary in every step that he's in with your product. The third one is conformity with user expectations, which basically means that the product should always respond in a way that you as a user expect. The where are we? The fourth one is controllability. Controllability is about keeping the user in control. The system should never start to take over because it thinks it is better than the user or more what's the word, intelligent. It should always be the user that should stay in control. That was the 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth one. The fifth one is learnability, and learnability means that a user should be able to learn how to use a system purely based on the knowledge that they have in doing the task. If you know how to do something and you get a new product, you should be able to use it right away. That's learnability. And then we have error tolerance. This is all about safety. By the end of the day, it's all about safety. So error tolerance, sorry, it's now called error robustness. Oh, goodness, what a. I hope not everybody's listening who I know. Now, it's now called error robustness, which is simply about letting the user use the system without making use errors. That is the very simple definition. And which one have I forgotten? It's 7. I don't have a cheat sheet here. The last one is suitability for engagement, which is about keeping users with the product. And there is one, I think, that I've forgotten. I think I just named 6. Amazing, isn't it?
No, it was 7.
Okay, excellent.
So
thank you very much.
You prove your point absolutely. You remember it in any situation.
Right.
Okay, Thomas. My next question will be about the future. I think it's quite reasonable, and there is no escape. We need to go virtual. If we are going virtual, so probably usability will meet some challenges.
Yes.
What do you think about what kind of challenges usability should accept or adopt?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it becomes, even looking at COVID-19, and nobody really knows when and if it will leave us. If I look at people working virtually together, one challenge we're having is that working together virtually is always simple once you have met physically. Okay, so the three of us here in the conversation, we have met before. I can remember we had drinks before, and we know each other. We feel comfortable with each other. And now that we know each other, we trust each other, we work together, it is a very simple thing to work virtually together. And if I look at the usability of all those, or user experience of all those web conferencing tools, to begin with, they all have trouble. Don't deep dive into it tonight. That is a session by itself, But the question is how to onboard people virtually that have never ever met each other before, how to make them good co-workers. I think that is a big challenge for us to be resolved in terms of user interfaces. I think so. And we are all experimenting with it. Who's we? I'm not experimenting with it, but manufacturers are experimenting with it. And whether they do the right thing or not, the future will tell us.
Pretty interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get back to the user experience and the different products that you were examined during your long career path. So I'm pretty much sure there were a lot of successful stories, but there might be some failure stories as well. And this part is sometimes even more interesting. So could you tell us, give us few examples about the usability failures that may make a significant impact on the product? Maybe from your experience, maybe from other cases you've met.
I I have lots of experience. I just always have to be careful which examples I'm giving.
Absolutely,
But,
maybe without names.
yeah. Oh yeah. But one interesting phenomenon that I have observed in household equipment is that there was a phase where every manufacturer believed any piece of household equipment needs a touch screen. And that was where all of a sudden kitchen ovens had touch screens and coffee machines had touch screens, and more or less the touch screen has disappeared from the kitchen, more or less. I would go as far as saying the more expensive kitchen equipment you have, the less touch screens you will have in your kitchen. So the touch screen, I think, was a big failure in many applications. Yes, it sounds, you might not want to agree with it, but I have objective data on it. And I exactly remember that one product manager of a large German organization, the company starts with an S and it ends with an S. And there's a company in South Korea that also starts with an S. They have approximately the same amount of letters. And if you take your glasses off and put the two company labels next to each other, you won't be able to tell who's who. Well, I'm talking about Siemens. And I exactly remember a product manager from Siemens who decided he was responsible for those good coffee makers. What do you call them? Not, the coffee makers that really melt the coffee. Yeah, these things that everybody loves. He was in charge of coffee makers, and he decided to take the touch screen out of coffee makers. And he came up with the first automatic coffee maker that we actually usability tested as our organization, our company, and it turned out to be very, very usable. And it made good coffee, which is a prerequisite. But it was quite interesting to see that this is maybe 10 years ago maybe 8 years ago, that we had that experience, because I remember that most of the colleagues of that gentleman had big doubts that he was doing the right thing. But he had the data. He had the data because we worked in that project, and anyway, what I want to say is it was interesting for me to see that in the household environment, the touch screen was applied in a very unusable way, and it has disappeared. That was, I think, such a waste of money and efforts in industry to come to this conclusion. That you could, with a bit of analysis and listening to usability people, of course, you would not have even started doing that. And interestingly, at the moment, I'm seeing a phenomenon where I have to be very careful in terms of, it's the car industry. I'm talking about the car makers, and they now feel that they have to make everything digital and try to get rid of all kinds of buttons that were there before, where nobody ever had a problem with. Opening a car door is a pretty okay experience, as long as you have a handle that you can pull or push. And in this industry, I currently see that there is a digitalization hype, which is leading to digitalization of analog things that should never be digitalized. And I see phenomena that I'm not even allowed to talk about because companies believe they are extremely innovative, but I must say, I don't believe it. So again, if I look at bad experiences and good experiences, there are phenomenons. You have companies where the usability people are not really listened to, but the bosses seem to know what people really need. That's another interesting phenomenon. There are organizations where the founder who set up the company was a bit of a visionary and has a very high level of empathy towards customers and never understands why the usability people have to analyze everything, because he feels he has the data already. And the dramatic aspect is he has them. He really has them. Heaven knows where from, but they are there. And so, you do see products that have been designed without any explicit usability efforts, simply based on the big boss saying, I want the following. On the other hand, you have the same phenomenon that the big boss says, I want the following, leading to total failure. And well, to give
Okay,
more precise examples,
thanks.
I
Maybe
would
you
have to
have
think.
some few more funny stories about usability. There are a lot of pictures on the internet, about different things done in very inappropriate way in terms of, I don't know, furniture in the room or some stuff, etc. Maybe you faced some some stories like this in real life.
Well, yeah, probably the most funny thing I came across was during my time as a usability tester. We really had to do a competitive test of innovative bicycle stands. A bicycle stand, I hope that this is the correct English term. It's if you cycle with your bicycle around the city and you want to park your bike somewhere, you look for a place where you can securely leave it, and this is what we call bicycle stands. And we had to do a usability test of new bicycle stands where manufacturers thought they were really something different, well designed, appealing designs, and we tested them with cyclists. We just put them up in the city of Cologne. That's where my company is based. We had a license of the city of Cologne. We could put up those things in the city, and we were allowed to observe people and interview them. Of course, we had to give people money. We say, "Excuse me, can I have a word with you? I come from the following company. If you give me 15 minutes, I give you €50, which is a good reason to stay." And what we saw was that a certain type of bicycle stand, people parked their bicycle in a way that one bicycle blocked 10 stands. And people were really happy about how easy they could park their bicycle. And they were locking it and said, "I've never ever found a stand where I could so easily lock my bike." And we took pictures, we had pictures of what people did with those bicycle stands. And that was hilarious for us. For the manufacturer, it was a big shock, big shock, big shock. They could, this was a big illusion that they could sell this product. But that was probably from a tester's perspective, you would say, "Wow, look at this, Jesus, we didn't expect this to happen." So 10 stands for one bicycle, that is a big failure in investment if you are a city buying new bicycle stands. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And by the way, there was one candidate. It was about 10 different companies that came up with their new things. There was one bicycle stand who actually had a waterproof instruction for use fixed to it. So this company assumed that people who park their bicycle would put their bike in there and read the instructions that they had. They really had a booklet,
Big
a
mistake,
waterproof
yes.
booklet. Yeah, big mistake, yes. But very funny from my perspective. Yes.
Okay, Thomas. Let's try to talk regarding the economical aspect of the usability. What about the ROI of the usability? I understand that the question it's a general, but at the same time, I think you could give us some examples.
Well, what speaking practice, ROI is return of investment, and if you talk among usability people or people who really want to understand how to push this forward, I would say in general applying usability in a project or applying usability in an organization is always a long-term investment. Typically, when I do a user requirements analysis for a project, it turns out that the requirements are considered relevant for the product, but hardly any of them can be implemented in the first, let's say, edition or version of the product. So basically, you do an analysis for a future release of a product. And that tells you that if you do usability work, you have to take your time. You put the seeds in the garden, and you have to wait for quite a while before you see the flowers growing. And one good key performance indicator that I'm using with our clients is that I say the number of change requests has to go down when you apply usability methods in your project. And to see or to have evidence that the number of change requests go down also takes time. You have to have seen a few projects before you see, wow, what we invested in early phases for our product design came back. Actually, there is a figure for that. There's a guy who has written a book on that. Sorry, I'm not prepared for the name, but the book is called Cost Justifying Usability by Mr. Bias, Dr. Bias from IBM. He has just received his lifetime achievement award from the UXPA, and Randolph has worked out whatever you invest in very early phases in your product design, you will save after the rollout. You will have saved 1 times 6 times 10, 60 times the money that you would have needed if you would not have invested the efforts in usability. So 60 is a figure in usability engineering for software, not for hardware, for software. Yeah, careful. And now the return of investment, you will only see it after a few releases of your products, when you have seen that the change requests that you have in late phases of your development, that they dramatically go down. I would claim that, and I have clients where we had to justify this. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, my next question is about when we should start usability testing on the project.
Mm-hmm.
The
right.
main rule of testing says as early as possible. What about usability?
Yes. Yes. It's always this thing, isn't it? As early as possible. What is the as early as? Now, my answer is to begin with, if you want to apply usability testing in order to change something, it is important, as a tool to change something on the product, it is important that you have a prototyping process as part of your development. And with prototyping, we simply mean that you don't develop code unless you have developed the user interface and tested the user interface with users. And for this, you don't necessarily need code. These days, we have nice prototyping tools. Most of them are low fidelity, but to make them high fidelity is doable. But to answer your question precisely, step number one, you have to have a prototype. If you have hard-coded stuff and you test this with users, you typically find resistance with the people who have built it. They will defend as much as possible what they have built because recoding is a lot of effort. But that's the first rule. The second rule is a very precise one. As soon as with the prototype, a complete user task can be performed, a usability test shall take place. As soon as you have a prototype where you can put a user in front of it and let the user perform a complete task, this is the moment of time where we would start testing.
Thanks.
Of course, that is. Sorry, you give me one question, I answer you 7. Hopefully one of the 7 is the question you asked. But what I want to say is, of course, that assumes that in your project, you have a list of user tasks that the product is designed for or is to be designed and developed for. And this is not necessarily self-evident. If you look for the list of tasks to be supported, I look at the tasks from the user's perspective, not from the system's perspective. Unless you have that list and you plan your project around that list, you cannot do decent usability testing. And that is a trap in usability testing. If you do usability testing more function-oriented, that you say, hey, we have developed this and this functionality, and now we want to test the functionality. Typically, these tests, in these tests, the products pass, but they don't show the reality of using the product, because users don't just use the search engine in Microsoft Word because Microsoft Word has a search engine. No, they are producing, for example, a serial letter and a series of letters that shall go out based on a database with names and surnames and addresses. And this is a task that somebody does. And if you can test with users that they manage to do this task effectively and efficiently, then we would say that's good. And on the other hand, if you find out as part of the test there are certain things that have to be changed to make people effective, then that is as good. But you have to be careful with usability testing to really have the right test cases, the right test tasks, we call them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a number of interviews with great experts from software testing world last month, and
I'm aware.
yeah, thanks for watching us. And almost all of them said that the value that the software testing as a profession is underestimated now, because the value of the mistake goes down dramatically. For example, when you've got your product on the CD discs and you need to make the hard copies and ship them all over the world, it's really hard for you to fix some bugs, and you really should put a lot of attention and a lot of efforts to test it correctly. But now when you make push new update, just pushing one button, so if you will have a bug, you will fix it in next update, next day, and no problem with that. Is this the case, the same case with usability story? Because right now you can push some features on the production, users will test it, will get your feedback, you will just fix it, and that's it. Is this undervaluate the value of the profession, the value of the usability expert as it is? Because we have so many beta testers now, and they are in most cases they are free of charge.
Now, the last thing you want from a user experience perspective is to let the product be tested on the market by users and be upset. Okay, have upset users based on products that they are supposed to be the testers of. So from a user experience perspective, this concept is completely wrong, and the service industry for usability testing is growing fastly. So usability testing as one aspect of software testing, is growing. And there is evidence from quite interesting what I'm saying now, because that is not so much in the news, but if you Google it, you will find it. In the medical industry, the amount of incidents that are reported to legal bodies based on use errors is dramatically increasing. And if you ask yourself, how is that? How comes that all of a sudden people make mistakes with products that they didn't make in the past? The answer is very simple: digitalization. Due to digitalization and digital interfaces to products that so far were only operated, let's say, analogically and at the patient side, due to digitalization, you have many more opportunities for users to interact with the product. And these many more opportunities to interact with these products lead to many more use errors if you have not applied usability engineering, or what is also referred to as human factors engineering. So I can only really speak for the usability testing perspective, and usability testing as a service is growing. And it's a matter of time, I guess, before let's say the traditional software testing community will get their credits back, simply because the customer experience, not user experience, customer experience is all of a sudden in the heads of the top managers, which is good. It's good. So they don't know what it means, but that it is something about making customers happy, those who give us the money. And one aspect of making them happy is to not make them service providers, okay? Secret service providers that test your faulty products. That is very, very bad practice for positive customer experience. And it might take some time before we see, let's say, before we see the value of that buzzword in the heads of managers.
Okay, so at least good news for all software testers. You have a new field, a new opportunity to grow and become a usability tester and usability expert.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Software testers should also be usability testers. Testers are testers, okay? And we expect from them that they make sure that the overall quality of the object that has been tested is secured. And one aspect of that is usability.
Thomas, can I ask you your favor to explain two buzzwords? First one is what is the human-centered design, and second one, what is human-centered innovation?
Okay, is that okay? Right. So you want sort of a buzzword-based explanation of it, or
Yes.
a simple explanation? Okay, human-centered design is about designing the right product, not designing the product rightly. Human-centered design is about designing the right product. Okay, that's as much as people can remember if you meet them in a lift and you have 3 floors together. Human-centered innovation is about what I just said before, is about solving problems that people were not aware of until they were solved. That is human-centered innovation. If you keep it as simple as this, people will come back with questions anyway. Okay. Of course you can come back with questions, but you gotta give explanations that make you attractive as someone to come back to. That's important. So give a simple statement that everybody understands and make sure people ask you again.
Thanks.
Okay, so can you give us a few examples about how it works? This is what you were trying me to do, and you're welcome.
Yes. You got me there. Okay, now I haven't prepared anything, so I have to think about it. Those of you who have not been to my trainings or who don't know me, I often refer to this egg boiler that allows you to boil soft eggs, medium eggs, and hard eggs at the same time. And that has been developed by a company in Germany. They are called Brainstream. I think I can really name them because this you can Google. The product is called the Beep Egg. And the Beep Egg is something that it's a plastic egg with a microprocessor inside, and it has the size of a classical egg. It fits into the fridge. You can keep it with the other eggs, and the way it works is that if you boil eggs, let's say you boil three eggs, and one of the eggs is supposed to be soft, the second one is supposed to be medium, and the third one is supposed to be hard boiled. You throw your 3 eggs in a traditional pot, which most people do anyway, and then you use this beep egg, this plastic egg, you also throw it in the pot. And this beep egg is a computer. It can simulate what happens in the other eggs. And it's a very popular product. And I want to go a bit further with my explanation. This product, as soon as all the eggs in the pot are soft, this plastic egg starts singing. And it sings "Killing Me Softly," which is a pretty known song. Yeah. It is true. I'm telling you the truth. You can buy it, and I don't get percentages for it, but I've came up with the requirements for it.
Yeah, you should.
And this product has been developed by a small startup in Hanover, Germany. At the time, startup, now it's a big company. They are called Brainstream. And I exactly remember I was sitting together with the development head of a large German manufacturer for household equipment and the development manager for so-called small kitchen equipment, that's where those egg boilers belong to, said, "Thomas, how comes that in 30 years, and that is already 20 years ago, in 30 years of my work, I did not come up with such a solution?" And I exactly remember my answer to him, and it was, because you didn't have methods for it. Because I would not have come up with this thing unless I had a methodological approach for it. And that is a good example for human-centered innovation, a very good example. So you only realized that you had a problem before you got that product. You always thought boiling eggs was working, but once you had this product, you thought, bloody hell, what a mess every morning, and everybody complains. They tell me I can't boil eggs. That's That's, I think, is a beautiful example for human-centered innovation. I would have to think about more for a minute and probably come up with them, but I would have to take a moment.
Great story. Thank you so much. And talking about usability and the measurement of usability, is the usability something that you can measure and you can compare?
Sure.
For example, usability of two products and say this product
Yes.
is more usable than that one. For example, two competitors
Yes.
on the
Yes.
market. What the methodologies
You
are?
can. Okay. Now there are measures of usability, and they all relate to the three dimensions of usability. Usability has three dimensions. The first one is effectiveness. Effectiveness simply means that a user gets their task completed with the product without external help, without the usability tester saying, "Oh, hang on, I will show you how it works," and then it's quite simple. So the first measure is simply task completion. The fact that people managed to do the task to do the task. Yeah, it sounds trivial, but that is one thing that you can measure, and you can compare products against it. The second dimension is efficiency, and to say it right away, the third one is so-called satisfaction. But the core, if you ask me from a practical perspective, the core of comparing products is, with regards to usability, is efficiency. And efficiency means that you measure time that people take, that you measure the amount of use errors that people make on the way to their target. So efficiency can be measured. Time is probably the simplest measure that you can think about, but there's plenty of others. And so there are measures for usability, and there are even standards. For these ones, I must admit, I don't have the numbers in my head, but I can produce them afterwards. There are measures for usability that allow you to do competitive testing. Now, there's even, for satisfaction, believe it or not, there are, to begin with, satisfaction, you typically use questionnaires to rate, say people, how happy are you with this product? There are published questionnaires for this. But when it comes to products where you really want to know exactly how satisfied people are with it, you do measurements like here my English is failing, but I try it, where you measure on your fingers. Your fingers can be dry or wet, depending on how nervous you are. They are wet, more wet than they would be if you were not nervous. And this can be measured. This is all, if you go to laboratories, that's what people measure. It just depends how relevant it is for the product success. Yeah. But yes, there are measures, objective measures for usability, and in every usability test you apply them. By the way, one measure is how many requirements a product meets with regards to usability. That's quite interesting, because I do that for clients, where I say, look, before you do arbitrary measurements on products and compare them to find out you are the best in a measure that nobody cares about, you might first want to think about the user requirements for your product, and then we check various products and see which of those really meet these requirements. That's quite interesting to enforce requirements engineering in companies, and I think enforcing requirements engineering is as relevant as enforcing testing.
Okay, Thomas, you are explaining a lot of interesting things about usability. So I think a lot of people will start thinking about how to become a usability tester. Actually, what is your advice? Where to start? And is it really worth to start as usability tester?
As long, to begin with, as long as you are in a team that is responsible for the user interface of a product, we have to differentiate. Basically, you can say every project develops two solutions. You always develop a technical solution, code, something where I say under the hood, and on the other hand, you develop a solution for the users, which is the user interface. And as long as you are in a project that develops user interfaces, there is always a place for a usability tester. And when you ask me how to start, of course, there are certification tests for usability testing, and the UXQB offers the certified professional for usability testing and evaluation. That's one sort of career path towards it. But if I start very sloppy and very simple, I always say, there is this statement: the one-eyed person is the king under the among the blind. I think, yeah. I think that's at least at least a German wisdom, right? What I'm saying is the 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 two-eyed is the king under the one-eyed, or among the one-eyed. That's the consultant's reality, because you're always faced with people who know something, but you have to know better. And I would say you have to first work out, am I in a project of the blind? Because if I am in a project of the blind, I can do anything. I can do anything and call it a usability test, and it's still better than not doing it. If I let people do a task with our product and tell everybody else to shut up and observe what's happening, then I am a usability tester. Okay. If you are in a team with people who know a bit about it, but just a bit, I would say maybe go for a training and get some certificate. And then you can play the two-eyed usability tester. But you don't play it, you are it. But in general, the profession of usability testing is growing. The demand is there. And I can only engage you to do that, because usability testing is often the first step in a project to get one step back, to question the design, and say, look, what we've seen now in this test, is that really what we want to let people experience on the market? So usability testing, and remember, I for 10 years I was a usability tester, okay, and that's 1/3 of my lifespan in the profession. To start off as a usability tester is a good start to become a usability expert, because you see people struggling, you see problems that no one ever has looked at before. And yeah.
Okay.
I can only
Thank
engage you.
Thank you so much. And I think we have a lot of questions in our Slido, and it's time to answer for them.
Okay.
So maybe we will read it to you, and then
Yes.
you may give an answer.
Yes.
Please, about 1-2 minutes, not maybe not more,
Right.
because
Yes.
we have few of them. So, hi Thomas, is there any book you can recommend for usability testing?
To begin with, I would recommend the curriculum for usability testing from the UXQB, because it's free for download on the internet. And the second one, I think, is just called usability testing. Goodness. I'm afraid I have to. There are two books. One is from Jacob Nielsen on usability testing, and the other one is from what's his name? Now I'm embarrassing myself. I don't have a teleprompter here, but I guess if you just download the curriculum for usability testing from the UXQB, there should be literature references in there that are credible and that are all worth reading.
Okay, thank you. Is there a particular model we follow to do usability testing? Maybe it's about some steps or workflow.
Yeah. There is a workflow. There is a workflow in usability testing. And again, to make it simple here, I would this workflow is already introduced in the curriculum for the Certified Professional for Usability Foundation level, which is also free on the web, www.uxqb.org. And the model is also in the curriculum for the advanced level usability testing. And just to give a very, very, very short insight, you have to make sure you have the right users for your usability tests. Otherwise, you're testing arbitrary stuff. And the second one is you have to have the right test tasks that really come from the context of our users. This is core to the model. And then there is a workflow to be followed. And this is published in the curriculum of the UXQB. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. And there is a next question about some examples when, because of the bad usability, product fails.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could you give us some examples, some stories? Not about your handset.
Yeah. there's so many things that have disappeared. If I just look at you always have to come up with examples that are relevant for people and relevant for the people you talk to in your project. And even companies like Google, Google have come up with the Pixel 4, which is a phone that they have released about a year ago, and now they take it off the market. And the subsequent product has various doesn't have features that this product had. So the Pixel 4 is standing right in front of me, right? And I have it. And there is plenty, just look at the plenty of products that you see every year in product launches, even from popular companies, and see what you know about these products 1 year after. Then you will realize that everybody is struggling with the subject, not only your company. Also, Google has some challenges, and Apple has challenges. They do lots of things right, but not necessarily always. And popular examples. These are my popular examples. The things that you buy and get upset with the week after. But besides these, I would have to think. I would have to think about,
Okay.
I talked about what I see in the car industry. I talked about this coffee maker before, which I found hilarious. I remember in Japan, there was an announcement, the first smartphone without a display. Okay, I repeat, the first smartphone without a display. You can Google that. It's a smartphone for older people where a bit of context analysis shows you they just get confused with these screens. They remember the 7 numbers of their children and relatives anyway, that they always ring all the time. And everything else is confusing to a certain user group, right? So when I hear things like the first smartphone without a display, I thought that was a bit of a claim, and it seems to work quite well in Japan. Where people get good. We have to acknowledge that, right? As in the Ukraine, actually, they also get quite old. So you might further investigate this. Anyway, there's not much more I would have to add at this moment.
Anyway, great story. Thank you. And the next question is, what is your advice? How to build really usable product?
Probably a secret.
Yeah.
No. I don't have many secrets, to be honest. I tend to talk a lot. But what is my advice? First, what you have to realize is that usability experts are not alone in this world. They are always part of an ecosystem of developers, business analysts, project managers, top executives who have a vision of what shall be built. My advice is quite simple. Take a methodological approach that everybody understands in your team and adopts. And that has to be something simple. For example, if your team is working with requirements already, which is true for many teams, then explain to them what a user requirement is, because it is something that they probably have not dealt with yet. If your team designs user interfaces, tell them they should first design a prototype without any piece of code and test that with users, although it is a fake. What I'm saying is, you have to have a methodological approach, because you cannot expect everybody in the room to be a genius. And we use methods because we are not geniuses. That's why we use methods. A method helps you to come, if you bake a cake and you have never baked a cake before, you better follow the recipe. If you don't follow the recipe, you'll end up with something ugly that tastes horrible, and people will never ever ask you again to bake a cake. So my advice is to establish methodology that the team understands and adopts. And you only adopt something if you understand it. That's a prerequisite for it. I am a fan of methods, because otherwise you have endless discussions in projects, because everybody thinks they're an innovator. You have 5 alternative solutions on the table, and they're all 5 great. They're all great. What do? You can debate for the rest of the year, or you have a method that compare both of them in a objective style, and there are methods for that.
Great advice. Thank you. And the next question is, Where exactly is the thin line between BA and UX designer? Both are responsible for understanding and requirements.
Yes. I would say there is no clear boundary. There is no clear boundary, and business analysts will be professionals that in the future have their stake in user experience and in particular in customer experience. I would say if you look for a thin line, I would say don't expect that business analysts really and truly are skilled in user requirements engineering. Don't expect that. Don't expect that. I hope I don't talk wrong about BAs now. I am sort of a BA in a way, but I would say whenever it comes to the data that are user related, a clever BA should consult usability and UX people to get those data. Because a BA, business analyst, business is a big term, huh? A business analyst has to deal with lots and lots of data. And the usability people, they deal with the data that are relevant for human system interaction. And this is tricky, as we all know. So that's where, if you look for a thin line, I would say this is the thin line. This is the thin line. You cannot be an expert in anything, in everything. That's even, we call ourselves UX professionals, but let's face it, are UX professionals with a certain specialty or a certain what's the word for that? We all, you have people who are professionals in testing, usability testing. You have people who are professionals in usable design, and you have professionals who are capable of doing user requirements engineering. There is not so many people who are good in all the three. So we are all specializing. That was the word I was looking for. Sorry. We're all specializing. And a BA has a very broad responsibility. Business analyst has a very broad responsibility. That's why I believe business analysts and equally product managers, because they have something in common, they have to learn to consult the right people for the right type of data that they have to push forward in projects or in organizations.
Thanks. And the second part of this question is, could you please also highlight UI versus UX?
This is okay. I'm 55 years old, and sometimes I get upset, and this is one of these upsetting. Sorry to say this. No, it's not an upsetting question. Goodness, don't get me wrong. No, what I would say is, there is no okay. Because now you really want to listen to what I'm saying, everybody. There is no real difference between UI design and UX design. It's all about designing the UI for UX. I repeat, we are designing user interfaces for positive user experience. That's what we're doing, And if you want to call that UX design, no problem. But the whole world is confused about those two concepts. Where is the camera? Concepts of UX design versus UI design. I think it is the wrong differentiation to make to begin with. It's all about designing user interfaces for positive user experience. And this is a much simpler story to be told than to argue even with bosses about the difference between UX design and UI design. That is my answer, I'm afraid.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so do you think one UX engineer can suffice for a team size of 10 devs working for a product?
Well, spontaneous answer, yes. Yes, spontaneous answer. More methodological answer would be some of you might know the so-called magic number 7, which was a figure derived in 1956 by a gentleman called Miller, 7 plus minus 2. And I would say in general, the ratio 1 to 7 is a healthy thing to have. If you look at Scrum projects, you see similar numbers. So, but 1 to 10, is also a number that one can remember, I would say yes. The answer is yes.
Okay. why there is so much demand for UX designers in the current IT world?
Why there is?
Yeah.
Because without, okay, to begin with, we would again have to argue what is a UX designer, but people call themselves this. That's fine, you know, it's okay. It's very simple, because if you don't have experts for UX when designing a user interface, the user interface becomes a creep. That is a known phenomenon. You know, look at large organizations. Look at what I said about medical products. What we're seeing is this phenomenon that that the amount of use errors made with medical devices increases dramatically, and that is one indicator why you need people in projects that help fixing the UX of a user interface. It's simply because without what the question what the question uses as a term, without UX professionals, you will not get a usable product, and companies are aware of that now. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think the last question for today will be comment and then question. Never heard of usability test. You never heard about usability test cases. Please give some examples on how do they looks like. Is it just about CSS background, color attributes like this, or something else?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Let's say, because I use that in plenty of courses and speeches. If you look at the tool called WinZip, which is a tool where you can compress files with, a usability test task is an instruction for a user where you say, on your computer, in the folder documents, there is a file called mypassportphoto.bmp. This photo is too large to fit onto your USB stick. Please shrink this file and put it onto your USB stick. That would be a usability test case or a usability test task for the user task compressing a file. That's an example. So it has nothing to do with attributes of the product. It's all about letting users do the tasks that they are supposed to do with the product and see how they perform. That's it.
Okay, I think it's the great end of the conversation. Very simply and very clear explanation what all the usability is about the users that are able to complete their tasks. Yes.
Absolutely. Full stop.
So, Thomas, thank you for your time. It was really great discussion. And especially, I would like to mention the great background of the interview, the great garden, I would say, in France. So, yes, it's unique. So, thank you. Excellent explanation. Now, even I now understand the difference. So, yes.
So thanks a lot for having me here.
Thank you very much, Thomas. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And next week we will continue exploring user experience with real rock star, with the international speaker and the author and the #1 customer experience influencer in the United Kingdom, James Dodkins. So stay with us and stay committed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.